There is a particular kind of pain that doesn't bleed. It doesn't announce itself with sound or motion. It arrives quietly, in the space between what someone promised and what they actually did. You trusted someone. You gave them access to your time, your loyalty, your energy, maybe even your future. And they used that access not to build something with you, but to maneuver around you, to take what they needed while keeping you calm, keeping you cooperative, keeping you convinced that everything was fine. They cheated the situation. Maybe not in the romantic sense, though sometimes exactly that. Maybe in the professional sense, the social sense, the personal sense. They played a different game than the one you agreed to play. They smiled at the table while hiding cards beneath it. They spoke the language of fairness while thinking only in terms of advantage. And here is what nobody tells you about that moment when you find out. The moment when the pattern becomes undeniable, when the pieces lock into place and you finally see the full picture. Most people believe your first instinct is the right one. React. Confront. Let them feel the weight of what they did. Make noise. Make it known. Restore some sense of justice through the force of your response. Machiavelli would tell you that instinct is exactly what they're counting on, not because reaction is wrong, but because uncontrolled reaction is information. It tells them precisely how much they got to you. It tells them where your limits are. It tells them which lever moves you fastest. And once someone knows which lever moves you, they never lose access to you completely. Even after the relationship ends, even after you walk away, the pattern remains. The next person who finds that lever gets the same result. This is why the first principle, the most important one, is calm. Not the calm of someone who doesn't care. Not the calm of someone who has given up. The calm of someone who has decided that their response will be a weapon, and weapons require precision, not momentum. When they cheat and you stay calm, something interesting happens. They expect chaos. They've prepared for chaos. They've rehearsed the defense, the excuse, the redirection. They know how to handle an emotional confrontation because emotional confrontations are manageable. You say something too loud, too raw, too exposed, and suddenly they become the reasonable one. Suddenly the conversation shifts from what they did to how you responded. You've seen this happen. You may have lived it. The person who was wronged walks away looking unstable, while the person who did the wrong looks composed. Calm removes that escape route. When you receive what they did with stillness, they have nothing to deflect toward. There is no volume to point at, no emotion to reframe, no reaction to weaponize. You've kept the subject exactly where it needs to stay. On them, on their behavior, on what they actually did. And in that stillness, something begins to fracture in their confidence. Because the people who cheat, who manipulate, who play angles in the dark, they are not as strong as they appear. They are calculated, yes. They are patient, yes. But they are also deeply dependent on your predictability. They built their entire strategy around your expected response. When you remove that response, the strategy collapses from underneath them. Machiavelli understood that in every dynamic where someone is being exploited, there is a moment, a single turning point, where the exploited person realizes the full architecture of what's been happening. Most people waste that moment. They burn it in an emotional confrontation that resolves nothing and reveals everything. The sharper move is to hold that knowledge like a hand of cards, close to your chest, unshown, and let them continue assuming you haven't seen anything yet. Because what you know, that they don't know you know, is the most powerful asymmetry in any situation. Think about what that means practically. You've seen the game. You understand how they move. You know which explanations are constructed. You know which moments of warmth were tactical. You know what they want from you and what they've been protecting. And they have no idea you've assembled this picture. They are still operating as though you're blind. They are still feeding you the performance, still calibrating their behavior around your assumed ignorance. Every move they make now is information. Every conversation is a window. Every interaction is a chance to understand more about how they operate, what they truly value, and what they're afraid you might find out. You are no longer a piece being moved. You have become the one watching the board, This is not about becoming cold. It's not about pretending nothing happened or suppressing what you feel. What you feel is real, and it is valid, and it matters deeply. But feelings and strategy are not the same conversation. You can honor your feelings in private, in silence, in trusted spaces, while simultaneously refusing to let those feelings become the instrument of your own undoing in the presence of the person who caused them. The calm is not for their comfort. The calm is for your position. And position, once lost in an emotional spiral, is extraordinarily difficult to recover. You've watched people lose this. Someone gets betrayed and they make noise about it everywhere, in rooms where the wrong people hear it, at times when the wrong people are watching. And instead of the betrayer being weakened, they are suddenly cast as the one who is unfairly treated. The wronged person's response became the crime. The original offence disappeared behind it. Dirty players understand this mechanism perfectly. It's not an accident when they provoke reaction. Provocation is a tool. It is deliberate. It is designed to make you the story instead of them. When someone does something to you and then engineers your response to look worse than the offence, they have used your own pain against you. They have taken the most real and raw thing inside you and converted it into cover for themselves. Staying calm is how you refuse to fund their escape. But calm is only the first layer. Calm without strategy is just silence. And silence without purpose is just waiting. What comes after calm is observation. And what comes after observation is precision. You are not simply doing nothing when you refuse to react. You are watching. You are cataloguing. You are understanding exactly who this person is in the fullness of their behaviour, not just in the moment of betrayal, but in every moment before and after it. Because the truth about people who cheat and manipulate is that they cannot stop. It is not a one-time event. It is a pattern, and patterns, once you know what to look for, are impossible to conceal. Every repetition teaches you something new. Every new move they make with the assumption that you don't see it gives you more. By the time you act, you are not reacting to one thing. You are responding to the whole architecture. And that response carries a weight that a single emotional confrontation never could. The people who truly break those who've wronged them don't do it loudly. They do it completely. They wait until they understand the entire structure, and then they remove exactly the right piece. Not the loudest piece, the load-bearing one. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about timing. Not that you should be passive, not that you should accept what happened to you, but that timing is the difference between an action that lands and an action that scatters. A confrontation delivered too early, before you have the full picture, before you hold all the cards, before you've removed their ability to spin and deflect, that confrontation is a gift to the person who wronged you. You've shown your hand with nothing in it but anger. Wait until the hand is full. Wait until the exit routes are closed. Wait until you hold more than they realize. Then move. And when you move, move with the kind of complete calm that unsettles people far more than fury ever could. Because fury, they understand. They've prepared for it. They've built walls against it. The thing that unmakes people who operate in darkness is not heat. It is clarity. It is being seen completely and accurately by someone who does not flinch at what they see. It is the realization that their performance has been transparent, that their strategy has been visible, that the person they thought they were managing has in fact been studying them. When they finally understand that, and they will, if you play this correctly, the collapse comes from inside them. You won't need to push. The structure they built on deception has no foundation that holds when the deception becomes known. It falls on its own. Your calm was the trap. Your patience was the architecture. Your silence was the walls closing in, and they walked right into it, because you gave them no reason not to. There is something that happens inside a person who has wronged someone and gotten away with it, or believes they have gotten away with it. A quiet confidence settles in, a looseness. The careful management they applied in the beginning starts to slip, because management requires effort, and effort requires threat. And if there is no visible threat, the effort begins to feel unnecessary. They start moving faster. They stop checking their angles as carefully. They say more than they should. They leave things in places they wouldn't have left them earlier. They become, in a word, sloppy. And sloppiness is not just an inconvenience to them, it is a transfer of power to you. This is one of the least discussed truths about people who operate through manipulation and deception. They are disciplined in the hunt. They are not disciplined in the assumption of safety. The same patience that made them dangerous in the beginning becomes the thing that undoes them once they believe the danger has passed. They cheated. You didn't explode. You didn't confront them in the way they expected. Maybe you seemed a little quieter. Maybe you seemed a little distant. But nothing dramatic happened. Nothing that signaled to them that you had seen what they'd done and were now thinking about it with a kind of cold, deliberate focus that should terrify them. So they relax. And you watch. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the behavior of people who feel secure. Security, he observed, produces a particular kind of blindness. When someone believes they are no longer being watched carefully, they stop performing. The mask slips not because they've decided to take it off, but because wearing it requires active attention, and active attention requires motivation, and motivation requires the belief that consequences are still possible. Remove the visible consequence and the mask begins to loosen on its own. You are not removing the consequence, you are delaying the visibility of it. And that delay is doing something they do not understand is happening. Every day that passes where they believe they've gotten away with it, they are actually getting closer to the moment where they haven't. Because you are still there. You are still watching. You are building something they cannot see being built. And the longer the construction goes unnoticed, the more complete it becomes before they ever realize what it is. This is what it means to break someone mentally rather than physically or emotionally. A physical or emotional confrontation produces noise and then resolves. People process it, they recover from it. They find a way to explain it to themselves and others that places them in the better light. But a mental break is different. A mental break comes from the accumulated weight of realizing that everything you believed about your position was wrong, that the person you thought you were ahead of was never behind you, that the control you thought you had was always an illusion they allowed you to hold, that the moves you made in confidence were moves made in someone else's trap. That realization does not resolve quickly. It does not allow for comfortable explanation. It sits inside a person and does damage that no single confrontation ever could, because it retroactively poisons every memory, every interaction, every moment where they felt safe and clever and in control. All of it becomes evidence of their own exposure. All of it becomes proof that they were never as invisible as they believed. And you don't have to say a single loud word to deliver that. The mechanics of this are more precise than most people realize. It begins with information management, which is really just deciding very carefully what you reveal, what you withhold, and what you allow them to continue believing. Most people in a situation where they've been wronged immediately want to signal that they know. They want the other person to understand that they've been seen, and that impulse is deeply human. There is something in us that needs acknowledgement, that needs the record to be straight, that needs the other person to know that their performance didn't land the way they intended. But that signal, that moment where you let them know you know, is the moment your advantage ends. Because the moment they know you've seen them, they stop giving you information. The window closes. The mask goes back on. The performance becomes controlled again. They shift from relaxed movement to careful navigation. They start managing every interaction with you as a potential threat rather than as a safe space. Everything that was loose tightens. Everything that was visible disappears. And you are left with what you saw before the signal, which may not be enough, and nothing more. Silence is not just about patience. Silence is about keeping the window open as long as possible, letting them move freely in the belief that they are unseen, so that what they reveal in that freedom becomes the full picture rather than just a partial one. Think about how much more you learn from someone who believes they are unobserved than from someone who knows they are being watched. The unobserved person shows you who they actually are. The watched person shows you who they want you to think they are. These are completely different people, and only one of them is real. You want the real one, not because the real one is useful for drama or confrontation, because the real one tells you exactly what you're dealing with. It tells you their actual priorities, their actual methods, their actual weaknesses. And it is their weaknesses, not their strengths, that matter to you now. Every person who operates through manipulation has a specific structure to how they work. They have patterns they repeat because those patterns have worked before. They have particular ways they respond to perceived threats. They have specific points where their confidence is real and specific points where it is performed. They have things they protect with unusual intensity and things they treat with unusual carelessness. All of this is visible if you observe without interfering with the observation. The person who cheated you is not a complete mystery. They are a pattern. And you are now in the best possible position to read that pattern with accuracy, because you are no longer inside the illusion. You know what they did. That knowledge is a lens that clarifies everything you see going forward. Behaviors that previously seemed neutral or even warm now show their true function. Moments that felt like connection now reveal themselves as calibration. Things they said that seemed genuine now show the architecture beneath them. You are not just watching who they are now. You are retroactively understanding who they have always been. And that understanding is the foundation of everything that comes next. Because when you finally do act, and there is a moment to act, there is always a moment to act, you will act from a position of comprehensive knowledge rather than raw emotion. You will know which move removes the most without exposing yourself. You will know what they cannot replace, what they cannot explain away, what they cannot spin into something more comfortable. You will know the load-bearing piece. Most people who've been wronged swing at the most visible part of what was done to them, the obvious betrayal, the surface offence, and the person who did it was prepared for that swing. They had the counter already built. The explanation, the reframing, the way of making your response look disproportionate to what you can actually prove. They have been managing this possibility since the moment they decided to act against you, but they have not prepared for you to be patient enough to find the part they didn't protect. They didn't think you would be calm enough, deliberate enough, clear-eyed enough to get past the surface. They assumed your pain would make you reactive, and your reactivity would make you manageable. The thing that breaks a manipulator is not matching their energy or exceeding their aggression. It is demonstrating that you understood them more completely than they understood themselves. It is showing them, not telling them, showing them, that while they were executing their strategy with confidence, you were mapping it. While they were moving pieces, you were memorizing the board. While they were congratulating themselves on their own cleverness, you were doing the quiet, unglamorous, essential work of understanding exactly how that cleverness operates. And then, at the right moment, in the right way, you show them you have the map. Not in an announcement, not in a speech, not in an emotional confrontation where your voice rises and your hands shake and they can feel how much damage they caused and use that visibility to make you the story. You show them in ways that are precise, specific, impossible to explain away. You show them in ways that remove options rather than create noise. You show them in ways that leave them standing in a room where all the exits have quietly closed and they didn't notice it happening because you gave them no reason to watch the doors. This is what calm makes possible. Not just dignity in the moment, not just a better impression in front of others. The calm is tactical. The calm keeps the doors accessible to you and invisible to them. Every day you maintain it, you move through a door they don't know exists and quietly close it behind you. They are still moving around in the original room, thinking they have the full picture, thinking they know where the exits are. They don't. You move them. And you did it while they were watching your face for signs of breaking and finding none. That is the deeper architecture of what staying calm actually does. It is not restraint for the sake of looking composed. It is operational. It protects your visibility. It protects your timing. It protects your access to information they would otherwise guard. It protects the advantage that their own sloppiness is handing to you. Slowly, every day, they believe the threat has passed. And underneath all of this, underneath the strategy and the patience and the precise management of what you reveal and when, there is something else happening, something they cannot account for because they don't have access to it. You are getting stronger, not louder, stronger. The discipline required to stay calm when you've been wronged, the mental work of observing rather than reacting, the clarity that comes from understanding a situation in full rather than responding to only its surface, all of that is building something in you. People who've been through this, who've chosen the patient response over the reactive one, who've done the hard internal work of holding position while everything in them wanted to collapse or explode, they come out of it with something that cannot be bought or borrowed. A sharpness. A composure that doesn't come from never being hit, but from choosing how to respond when you were. A confidence that is not performed, but earned in the specific and private way that only you know how it was built. The person who wronged you cannot take that from you. It is, in fact, something they gave you. Their betrayal became the environment in which you developed a capability you did not have before. And that is a bitter kind of gift, but it is a real one. Machiavelli never promised that the world would be fair. He never told people that good behavior would be reliably rewarded or that clean hands guaranteed safety. What he promised was far more durable than fairness. He promised that understanding, real, unsentimental, clear-eyed understanding of how human behavior actually operates, would give you a position that sentiment alone never could. Not because sentiment is worthless, but because sentiment without strategy in a world where others are operating strategically is not virtue. It is vulnerability. You can be good and still be sharp. You can be ethical and still be precise. You can refuse to become the thing that wronged you and still understand it well enough to neutralize it completely. These are not contradictions. They are the full picture of what it means to be genuinely capable in the environment you're actually in, not the environment you wish you were in. The world you're navigating has people in it who move without the constraints of the morality they advertise. It has people who make decisions based entirely on what they can take, not what they can build. It has people who read your goodness as a resource and your patience as weakness. And the answer is not to become them. The answer is to understand them so thoroughly that their methods lose their power when directed at you. Because a trap only works on someone who doesn't know it's there. There comes a moment in every situation where patience has done its full work, where observation has built the complete picture, where the calm has held long enough that the architecture beneath what was done to you is fully visible, fully understood, and fully mapped. And in that moment, the question shifts. It is no longer about what happened to you or how you held yourself together while you figured it out. It is about what you do with everything you now know. Most people imagine this moment as confrontation, as the scene where everything comes out, where the truth lands on the table, where the person who wronged you finally has to stand in the full light of what they did with no room to maneuver and no story left to tell. And sometimes that is exactly what this moment is. But more often, the most powerful version of this moment is quieter than that, more precise, more complete, because the goal was never to make noise. The goal was always to remove their power over your life so thoroughly that they cannot find their way back into it. Breaking someone mentally is not about cruelty. It is not about revenge in the theatrical sense, the loud confrontation, the public exposure, the satisfaction of watching them scramble. Those things can feel necessary, and the feeling is understandable, but they are rarely the most effective path. Cruelty is messy. It creates collateral. It gives the other person a role to play, the wrongly accused, the misunderstood, the victim of your rage, and people who are skilled at manipulation are extraordinarily skilled at playing that role convincingly. What you want is not their discomfort in a moment. What you want is their permanent removal from the position they've been occupying in your life, your professional space, your social environment, your mental landscape. You want them out, not loudly, completely. And complete removal requires a different kind of action than confrontation. It requires the careful, deliberate dismantling of every advantage they hold, every piece of access, every source of influence, every point of leverage they've built inside your world. You remove them one by one, quietly, without announcement, until the structure they built around their position in your life has nothing left to stand on. This is where the observation pays off in full. because you know exactly what they value in the dynamic. You know what they came for, what they've been taking, what they depend on continuing in order for their position to hold. You know the specific things, not the vague general sense of what was wrong, but the specific mechanisms through which they maintained their advantage, and you close those mechanisms down. One by one, without drama, without explanation, without giving them the opportunity to negotiate, to reframe, to find a new angle of access before the old one is completely gone. The people who do this most effectively are the ones who understand that explanation is a vulnerability. When you explain why you are pulling back, why you are changing the dynamic, why you are no longer offering what you previously offered, you give the other person material. You give them something to argue against, something to reframe, something to use as evidence of your irrationality or your oversensitivity or your misunderstanding of what actually happened. Every explanation is an opening. Machiavelli understood that the most secure form of action is the kind that cannot be argued with, because there is no stated premise to attack. You simply change, you simply move, you simply become someone who operates differently in this particular space. And when they ask why, you give them nothing that loads the gun they will absolutely point back at you. This is not dishonesty. It is the recognition that some people have forfeited their right to your transparency. The access they had to your thinking, your reasoning, your emotional process, that access was something you extended in good faith. They used it as a tool against you. Withdrawing it is not cruelty. It is the correction of an error. You gave access to someone who was not who they presented themselves to be. Now that you know who they actually are, you adjust accordingly. That is not a moral failing. That is basic sanity. The mental break you are engineering in them is not delivered through a single blow. It accumulates. It is the experience over time of finding that the levers that used to move you no longer move you, that the approaches that used to produce a predictable response now produce nothing, that the access they assumed was permanent has quietly, steadily, irrevocably closed, that the position they thought they held is gone, and they cannot identify the moment it left, and they cannot find the path back to it. That experience, the experience of losing ground you didn't know you were losing, in a game you didn't know had changed, against a person you thought you had fully mapped, is the most disorienting thing a strategic person can go through, because their entire sense of security rests on the accuracy of their model of you. When the model is wrong, everything downstream of it collapses. Every prediction fails. Every move misses. Every approach hits different terrain than the one they planned for, and they cannot correct the model because you have not shown them what changed. You have simply changed. And the gap between who they thought you were and who you actually are now, that gap widens with every failed prediction, with every approach that lands on nothing, with every attempt to re-establish the old dynamic that produces no result. Eventually they understand that something fundamental has shifted, that the person they were operating against is no longer available, that the version of you they built their strategy around does not exist anymore, and because they cannot identify what changed or when or how, they cannot adapt. They are left with a strategy designed for someone who is no longer there and nowhere to go with it. That is the break. That is the moment where the structure of their confidence in their position cracks from the inside, not because you hit it, because it lost the foundation it was built on, and that foundation was your predictability, your accessibility, your willingness to continue operating by the rules of a game they were cheating. You simply stop playing by those rules. Quietly, completely, without announcement. Now understand what has happened to your own position through this process, because this is the part that matters beyond the specific situation, beyond the specific person who wronged you, beyond the particular betrayal that started all of this. What you have built through the patience and the observation and the calm and the precision is not just a resolution to one situation. You have built a capability. You now know what it feels like to hold yourself together when someone is trying to use your own emotions against you. You know what it takes to observe rather than react, to watch rather than respond, to think about strategy in the middle of genuine pain rather than letting the pain dictate your decisions. That is not a small thing. That is one of the rarest and most valuable capacities a person can develop, and you developed it under conditions that would have broken a less deliberate person. The world does not stop producing situations like this one. There will be other rooms with other people who operate the way this person operated. There will be other moments where someone believes they can use your decency against you, your consistency as a map, your goodness as an opening. And because of what you have been through and how you chose to navigate it, those people will find something they did not expect. They will find someone who sees them clearly, who does not flinch at what they see, who does not give away their thresholds, who does not rush to restore balance before it's strategically sound to do so. They will find someone who moves with a particular kind of calm that is not passivity, but readiness. The kind of calm that does not come from having nothing at stake, but from having decided exactly how you will respond when someone puts what you have at stake. The kind of calm that is not comfortable for the person sitting across from it, because it does not give them what they need to calibrate. It does not show them where the line is. It does not reveal how much is already landed. It just holds and watches and waits for the right moment. Machiavelli was not writing about how to be cruel. He was writing about how to be free. Free from the particular kind of captivity that comes from being readable, predictable, emotionally manageable by people who do not have your interests at heart. He was writing about the difference between a person who moves through the world, reacting to what others do, and a person who understands the game well enough to decide when and how they respond to it. Between someone whose behavior is dictated by whoever is pushing their buttons, and someone who has located their own buttons and chosen to guard them. That freedom is what you are building. Every day you held the calm when you wanted to break. Every day you chose observation over reaction. Every day you resisted the impulse to show your hand before the moment was right. Every one of those days was a day you were building this. The person who wronged you gave you a reason. But you built the capability. That is yours. They cannot take it back. They cannot undo what it cost you to develop it or diminish what it means that you did. The specific situation will resolve, is perhaps already resolving, in the quiet and complete way that patient, precise action tends to resolve things. But what you carry forward from it is permanent. You are not the same person who first noticed that something was wrong. You are not the person who absorbed the first wave of that recognition and felt the floor shift. You are not the person who had to decide in real time with real pain whether to react or to hold. You made those decisions, and you made them well, and the person on the other side of all of that deciding is someone with a different kind of stillness in them. A stillness that has been tested and held. That is not a small thing. In a world full of people who are easy to move, difficult to move is power. In a world full of people whose emotions are accessible to anyone with the right lever, people whose inner world requires effort to reach are rare, and they are respected, even by the people who would prefer them to be easy. There is something in even the most strategic and self-serving person that recognizes genuine capability when they encounter it. They may not admire it openly, they may not admit what they see, but they adjust for it, they recalibrate, they file away the information that this particular person is not the easy target they appeared to be. And some of them, the ones with enough self-awareness to be honest with themselves in private, feel something adjacent to respect. Not the kind they would ever say out loud, but the kind that shows up in the way they move differently around you from that point forward. More carefully, with more awareness that you are watching as much as they are, with the understanding that the game they ran so confidently is not a game you are playing from behind anymore. You are not behind.